Okay, so this this is Fusion, and so I'm going to give you basically a quick tour. Down the left here is your project window or your data panel. In here you're going to have your Fusion projects. For example, this is my Jet one that this whole series is about. There's ones that the courses that I've actually completed within Autodesk. They provide courses called Fusion Mastery. There's the Lars YouTube one, which I've just shown you in the part of the previous video. There was my first project when I was in messing around, and then underneath it there's libraries, assets, there's training courses, there's a load of samples, simulation samples, so there's loads of stuff, there's loads of just resources there. Another good point to mention actually is within Fusion there's links to I can't remember what I can't remember which section it's in, but I think it's in the manufacturing part. But there's like a database of fixings and things, so you can import screws and nuts and bolts and things like that, and they've got this huge catalog. So you'll find absolutely everything we use in modeling already modeled for you in an accessible way. Okay, so that's the sort of data panel, and then this is your workspace. Okay, this is an empty or a blank workspace. This is obviously where you do your modeling. Down here is your browser window. So this has got like, when you start modeling, this will start filling up with different things. And you've got your document settings. So we've got here the units. We've got the views, the different views you can go to, as in like the position of your camera versus the model. The origin. Okay, so your origin is the center of your workspace. And these are your different planes. So you've got your side plane, your front rear plane, and your top bottom. And then up here you've got a cube. And you can see here, if I just grab the cube on my left mouse button, this basically is a way just to quickly navigate to different views. And I really, really love this. It wasn't in the last CAD tool that I used. Really good. And as I said, if you just left click on it and hold it, you can just spin it around. But actually, as I said, I prefer my 3D mouse. As you can see, this is me using my 3D mouse, left, right, up, down, rotate forward and backwards, etc. So that's that. Okay. So I'm going to load up the conduit that I worked on from Lars. And the reason I know about when I mentioned about the fixings, because in this conduit exercise with Lars, he takes you through the process to go and download them through Fusion. I can't remember where it is. It's annoying me now because, oh, there it is down there. Mcmaster-Carr Component. Okay, so if you go there, it'll take you to. I'll just go to it quickly. So you go. It's got a lot of threaded fasteners, nuts and bolts, all sorts of stuff, tools, welding machines, whatever you want. I mean, there's tons of stuff in there, literally. So you can get everything you want. I think there's like, there's like rose joints, and so yeah. So that's a really good thing as well, because you don't then have to think about. You can put your nuts and bolts and screws in. So that's another really good point. I really loved it, as the fact that it's already linked in there. I'm just going to turn that off though. Okay, close. Right. So we've talked about the cube. Okay, so there's, at the moment, I'm a little bit further on in my project. I've done the fuselage and the tailplane, and I'm just about finished the air intakes. But there's a few key things that you'll use within Fusion. Okay, number one is sketch, which is here. And sketching really is you're drawing on a surface. That's the fundamental of it. There's planes, which are down here. So you can see there's construction planes. So a plane is really the surface you want to draw on and where it lives in space. So if you think about ribs or profiles of a model that we normally use, they're spaced out kind of equally from front to rear. Each one of those would represent a plane that you're going to draw on, basically. And actually, the way I've done my modeling is very similar to how we model in today in Balsa. You create your profiles, you separate them out, and then you link them up with a tool called Lofting, which is really basically putting that blue foam in there, but making it perfect without you having to cut it or sand it already. Yes, so, okay, so also down the side here, we've got, this is like your different working areas. So you've got design, which we are in, there's generative design, which we don't really need. There's rendering, which is to make something look pretty, you know, like give it some shine and texture. There's animations for things like publications. How do you take it apart? How do you put it together? There's simulations for stress testing. I think there's also an airflow one in there, which I'm interested in having a look at. Manufacturing, if you're going to do any CNC, so if you're going to CNC your wings or something like that, you can use this tool to generate the code for it. And then also you can add from designer animations as well. You can create a drawing. So that's like the different packages. So each one of these you go into will take you into a different type of workspace, okay? But I'm not going to go into those right now. In here, you then have your different types of modeling. So you've got solid modeling, surface modeling, sheet modeling for like metal work, etc. And then there's the spare tools, or the tools which cover everything at the end. And it's worth noting in here is where we can 3D print this part. So I've just clicked on it, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the whole thing. Or let's just do the body. And then I can just go, okay, where's Cura? Hit OK. So Cura is the 3D printing tool. You don't print it directly from Fusion. You send it to Cura, and Cura turns the 3D model part into a part that can be printed, because the way you print something is it's not solid. It won't have a solid internal. It'll have structure in it to support it, but it's just the way that you do it. It's just the way you turn your solid model into a model that can be printed. Okay, while that's loading, I'm just going to go back here. Just quickly through some of these. So under solid modeling, there are the create. So obviously this is creating things. You create a sketch. Lofting, as I mentioned, you can see there's a nice picture there. Hopefully you can see that of, you know, a square to a circle, and then how it joins that together. Ribs for strengthening, webbing, which I'll come to later. You know, a whole host of other things. Mirroring, so when you do half a fuselage and then you can mirror it, so you've always got exactly a perfect copy on either side. And I'll talk about that later as well, because I did make a mistake where I didn't do that and I had a problem later on. Modify, so that's taking the parts you've just created and modifying them so you can fillet them, so round them off, chamfer them, you know, cut them at an angle, shell them, so taking a solid model and turning it into a shell, which is something that I'll need to do because I've got a solid model right now. Then you can figure out your thickness of your composite, etc. Yeah, so there's like, that's just the modifications. Then if you're going to create assemblies, which I'll do later in my jet, and we've talked about planes already. So I'm just going to stop this one. I'm going to start another video. Okay, so I'll be back in a second.